Well, I was thinking that about this at work while thinking through other things about Uplift Protocol, but to get more on track about like levels of grim or kind of like a squick factor, and how some stories go far too way in the way or in the vein of J.R.R. Martin's Got, or they'll have a bunch of really off the wall shit like Berserk does, but Berserk balances it with lighter moments. Don't get me wrong, like Berserk literally does balance stuff with lighter moments of humor with Guts and his band of, misfits basically. But I've realized like with certain stuff, like there's points I will not go to. Case in point, what Laurel K. Hamilton does to her characters, what happened to the Black Jewels characters. Like when I was in my 20s, I read some stuff where because everybody was saying like, "Oh, you should really read this. This is a good series." And I get down to reading it, and I'm like, "Oh my!" Especially with Black Jewels, like everybody kept like saying like, "Oh, you got to read this. This is really good." It's like I liked the more uplifted animal aspect, but everything else was a big train wreck of abuse and other things where it's just abuse for abuse's sake. It didn't really have much of a point other than shock value, which is I guess the biggest thing for me in like more gritty aspects. If you're just putting stuff in there for shock value, then why is it even there? Like, say, like, for example, to make McEvil super, super evil, you're like, oh, I'm going to put all the raping on screen. I'm going to penetrate a bunch of minors and blah, 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 show that the evil McEvil is a pedophile. The thing is, Dune basically told you that the Baron Harkonnen is definitely a pedophile into young boys, into very young men, and all that stuff, but they didn't put it blatant in your face on the screen. You knew how depraved and fucked up he was just by his characterization and how he treated people in general. Sometimes with bad guy stuff, you don't have to put it all blunt in your face on the screen because I got my own preferences here. So basically, with all this stuff on the Twitter earlier today, it's like yes, I do like to find science fiction meshed fantasy stuff ever so often, and I found a decent amount of it. It's just looking into this Audible series even more, like, because again, I didn't see this guy's series until much later. I was like in my mid 20s, and for reference, here, give me a moment. But yeah, I'm pulling it up here. The Masters of Flux and Anchor. See, the thing is, the real reason why I brought it up initially because people were wanting science fiction and fantasy mixed, and where it's like a kind of more fantasy setting, but underneath it is like a science fiction, like, oh wait, this is like a long lost colonies type of thing. And yeah, as I was re-listening to book 1 and 2 on the Audible, like I do have the first two of the 5 books. I'm like, damn, you know what? They're right. This thing is, it's not quite Black Jewels level disturbing, but it's disturbing enough to where it makes the Grayson's sister planet from Harrington, the Medasins at Erotica. Oh man, because they were fundamentalists, like Muslim shit taken to the extreme, basically. But with like a little bit more of a Grayson bent, because they are fundamentally against technology, even more so than the more moderate Grayson faction. But to get back on point, this particular series, it makes those people look downright pleasant in comparison. Like, I just forgot how, off the wall it was, because again, some of these things I remember reading back when I was in like my mid 20s. And me, I'm over 35 now. Like, yeah, Florida woman age. Yay! But yeah. And I looked at a little bit of the background of this Jack L. Chalker guy. I mean, like, oh my goodness. So sometimes it is a good idea to look into the writer's background at least a little bit so you know what you're heading into. But he wasn't the only one that had like a creepy factor. Apparently Ringo's Kildar series goes very gung-ho with the it's like, wow, wait, they're underage and you're having your main character sleep with them? Um even in, let's see, what was it called? Like the Rhapsody series by Hayden. I I read the first four books, and what the squick factor for me was, even though they were of similar age, like she was like 13 and he was 14, Hayden basically had those characters sleep together at such a young age. Like if we were back in the Middle Ages, where the old age stuff would have been like 35 to 40 and then you die. I mean, I get it. People, married much younger then, but it's still like it's still a bit of a squick factor. Yeah, yeah, I'm like, I don't want to be reminded of pedo. No, because again, real life has a whole lot of that right now, where Twitter protects the pedo. Mm, I'm probably going to put this one on my blog just because I don't know if it would get like some sort of strike on the YouTubes. So, yeah, and again, I mainly want to use that darn channel, like I've said before, as a more upbeat, a little bit more upbeat and finding indies and type of thing, and my wheelhouse of space opera. But yeah, there you go. Uh, Let me take a look here, because I remember looking at some of these reviews for this particular series by Ringo. Um, but as a little side to even more side note, um, uh, DJ's correct. Whenever Ringo and Weber work together, Ringo forces Weber to basically, speed up his action sequences, while Weber kind of, has Ringo like tone his shit down where he's not like going off the walls either. So I guess sometimes some team ups are pretty good, but it can be a bit, ooh, it's like, man, because I shouldn't just throw shade at Laurel K. Hamilton in Black Jewels Lady. What was it? Ann Bishop? Yeah, her. I shouldn't just throw shade at them. I should definitely throw a little bit of shade at Ringo here for, it's like, oh God, he's like, oh, you made the character do what now? Oh no, because I'm looking at this. I'll just go to a couple of the more colorful 1-star reviews, and even 2 stars. But degenerates from action to rape. It's like, yeah, or maybe disintegrates or something like that. But still, Florida Woman in the English language is always a fun time to be had. But I'm looking at it. Predictional action line through creative in details. Real issues are with explicit content. The first section was a decent action story that I've come to expect from Ringo. Super heroic Mike H., as somewhat broken but holding it together, restored soldier saved the day. However, from that point, things got strange. By part 2, there were 12 chapters of explicit sex. So basically, this series is Ringo's Anita Blake, basically. It's like, okay, again, I've said this before and other stuff, but if you're gonna do a lot of explicit junk, especially when it has this quick factor to like 11 or 12, or where it's like, nope. Because again, that's the reason why I even tune out of J.R.R. Martin crap. I'm just like, it's just I can only take so much of that. It's like, because as a writer, I'm looking at different things to see, like, how can I incorporate this with my own writing style to see if I can have fun adding different elements. But it's like, that's one thing I'm not really going to do. I can't go really past PG-13. I'll have some cursing and stuff, colorful cursing, and there's the joke with the curse jar. The Murphy family has their curse jar, and honestly, half of Liza's team by themselves have contributed to that curse jar. That's just gonna be an on-running gag. And the moment when Star legitimately does throw out a curse, that's gonna make everybody worried. So that's the kind of joke I'm coming in with that angle. But other than that, yeah, even the most I'll do on screen is hugs, kisses, maybe suggestive eye waggling, eyebrow waggling. I I'm honest to God, yeah, I'm most comfortable as a writer to do just fade to black. There's some people that have more talent for at least kind of putting in romance scenes that are more like Christopher Reeve's Moment in Time, or Here, let me look at it. Let me make sure I'm getting that correct because I do like that movie. I'm waiting for it to go on a pretty decent sale so I can get a hard copy. Ah, yes, this was called Somewhere in Time. It's like it's very sensual. You know what they're going to do, but it pulls out to let the characters have their private moment, but you definitely know how it ends up. And then it cuts back to after they're having, like, like a nice lunch or breakfast on the before the fireplace, and you can tell that she's relaxed, and it's like the afterglow portion or something. But yeah, they didn't have to go into explicit detail of like, oh look, there's the sexy times on screen. It's like, no. Personally, I think it's a little bit more classy to like kind of fade to black, or if you're going for the femme fatale angle, that like Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, like even that had more restraint to where it's like, yes, you knew she was using her sexuality to basically curb stomp some things, but it was a more light touch. Even Xena had moments like that where it's like it's a lighter touch on the sexuality, whether it was, between Xena and Gabrielle, or Xena and an old flame, or Gabrielle and an old flame. Because again, most times people will focus on one thing or another, but the whole show had an interesting bent to it. It was mostly campy fun, but it had its light moments, it had its more serious moments, and everything like that. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's like there's only so, unless you're really making fun of like a certain kind of erotic factor, there's only so much I could take. Uh, and yeah, looking at some more stuff for this whole Kildar Paladin of Shadows type of series. Um, Here, I'll even show you how it opens. A little bit towards the end, like, I live in submission to Allah, Allah said, nodding. What is the mission, Great One? We shall strike at Satan's weakness, the tall man said, his eyes lidding heavily. The love of its whores. It's like you can already tell, it's like, even though it's like, going to be like extremist of something versus whatever of something else, um, the way he goes about it, it's pretty blunt, but it's also like I can see where the other reviewers are coming from with the 1 and 2 stars. It's half the night ladies are pretty much like they're 14-year-olds. Um, like the other guy said, I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn sort, and I believe in finishing what I start. So part 3, I wish I could unread that brutal rape of a prostitute by the main hero. My stubbornness didn't go that far. I stopped reading just a few lines in. After Under a Graveyard Sky series, I was a true fan of this author character's action, militaristic realism. I thought Ringo was the master. Now I doubt I'll read another one of his or reread a fallen favorite. You could at least post a warning. So, yeah, it guys, it's get. That's the reason why. Again, most people who want to dabble in more erotic or fucking off the wall awful things like J.R.R. Martin does, most of them will write under a pen name for whatever isn't their usual fare. Me personally, I'll never write porn. I'll never write erotica because I find either it's so badly done that I laugh my head off, or it's so squick factor that I'm like, I'm gonna launch this book across the room. Now, the difference between that and being like a sensitivity reader is the sensitivity readers will get offended by every little thing. Actual readers who have a certain kind of limit, they'll look at this and like, I'm not going to read this garbage ever again. So it might have been better for Mr. Ringo to actually write this particular series under a pen name. Because I do like his take on the zombie stuff. I want to basically see where the comic book version goes. But I also understand the other flip side of this. Like, some people are saying it's like S&M porn. I bought this because I really enjoyed Ringo's other novels, and Ringo does have some other good novels. It really does. This is like a low point, because most of the people who read his stuff are used to the more action-packed military sci-fi kind of setup, where it might have some grit factor and maybe some overt political tones, kind of right-leaning political tones, but for the most part, the guy does do a good action yarn. So this is pretty much like a dud to me. Um, this other reviewer continues to say, I started to have qualms with the first third and then the rape fantasies. Then the second third was just bondage fantasy, and then finally a full-on rape in the last portion. A vile, misogynistic story. And it is a verified purchase. So this thing isn't getting like ratio by people, you know, who find it completely off the wall. But there is this one reviewer where the phrase "the good, the bad, and the ugly" fits this book quite well. Again, because yeah, Ringo is good with action. That's why when he teams up with Weber, it has pretty interesting results. But even at Weber's darkest point in his books, he doesn't go in depth to like depravity of the bad guys. Like just like in book 2 of Harrington, he basically showcased what happened to that crew after they were captured by the enemy, because at the time the Grayson's sister planet were using the Peeps technology, but they didn't understand how to use all of it. So Alfredo Yu was like, these guys are fucking monsters. I mean, because again, Alfredo Yu eventually defects over to Grayson later on, but it was a way of showcasing that even on different sides, most times you'll encounter decent characters on all ends. But the Graysons, you know, Medason, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but those guys, the Edicott's people, they're fucking insane. They basically, when they captured Madrigal's crew, they shot the captain, and they basically thanked him for delivering a bunch of whores to them, and they systematically raped, you know, the women of that crew, because there was only 2 survivors, Mercedes Brigham and the other young lady. Brigham I know better because she turns up a lot more in the series. She eventually ships out with the Grayson Navy and becomes one of their Mustangs, from what I remember. But the thing is, Weber didn't have to show on screen like all the depravity that was happening to this crew. The end result basically was a gut punch, where at one point all the male personnel wouldn't go beyond a certain point in the Blackbird yard, and then Harrington noticed that all the people that were in this area were all women, and that made her very worried. And then when she found Mercedes and, you know, Mei Ling, Mei Ling, she was very gentle with them, but you could tell that it was a horrific experience. Like, Mercedes Brigham basically tried to protect the other people as much as she could. Even the captain did, and that's why he was shot. But the aftermath is all that really needs to be shown. I mean, because again, the human mind can fill in the blanks without much help when it comes to certain things. Like, you don't have to spell it out on page for people. So basically, when Harrington goes back to basically discuss things with this head Medason, Scotty Tremaine has to prevent her from blowing his brains out point blank. It's just, and the Graysons themselves end up, you know, court-martialing and putting all these guys through military trials for what they did to the Manticoran crew. Or Manticoran. Yeah, I'd probably have to look at that again to see how to pronounce that, because there's a specific way he wants people to pronounce it, but it's okay. But yeah, as far as darker stuff in fiction, yeah. If I have anything even remotely close to that in Uplift Protocol, it's gonna be like the way Kronos treats people. I don't have to put it in tons of words to be like he sees people as like insects or something to be studied. The way he treats his own daughter is evident fact of that. Like the complete disregard they have for, you know, using her blood samples as, you know, aspects of brood mother or seed mother setup. You know, I didn't have to go into detail of how they basically didn't give a fuck. You know, it just took a few lines and you realize just how much of an object they see her as. But they don't have, Kronos doesn't have any kind of sexual drive. He's just he's just pretty much a psychopath that thinks all life should be shoved out in the open for Unity to gobble up. Um, and that's the reason why with Madame Mayhem, her infatuation with Kronos is just disturbing in itself. It's like, I don't have to spell it out for people or go into much more than that. Just a few lines and boom, okay, everybody gets the idea. We don't have to go into X Factor kind of squick territory because it's like, nope. I'm kind of following the idea that, again, you'll see that the good guys, like, as the family grows, it's like, yes, like, there you go. Babies happened. Yep, there you go. Oh, boy. Looking at the rest of some of these reviews, it's like, yeah, I'm glad I dropped the hell out of Anita Blake and even the Black Jewels shit way back when I did. Because once I got to the end of book 1 of that Black Jewels thing, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why she goes extremely explicit in what happens to these people. I'm like, why? Just why? And a lot of times it's like, why even involve children characters in anything that's remotely adult? Seriously, why even do it? Why even do it? I mean, I guess to focus a little bit more with the Kildar stuff, for this one reviewer, caution, this book is not for the PC crowd. Well, yeah, one, that's very blatant. But two, this person saying they have read the entire series and wishes there was more. He's saying this book is not for children, high schoolers, or adult children that need safe spaces. It's not for those who think it heroes should be perfect. The best part of this series is the hero is not perfect, has issues like all men that deal in violence. Since it's fiction and written for entertainment, be advised it does have sexual content. Not the plain Jane variety of sexual content. It deals in violence dealt to terrorists that kidnap women for political purposes. For those readers with a naive world view of the world that have not seen the ugly underbelly of this world, it might be a shock to that Me Too means nothing to most of the world. Most of the world are just trying to stay alive and feed their families and have to make hard decisions. This book is for those wanting an adventure. A male protagonist that is not perfect, but does have a code and deals out justice that he thinks should be dealt. I recommend all of John Ringo's books. Thing is, dude, even when it comes to a gritty militaristic setting, I want my protagonist to have standards. I want them to, at their core, be good people. This book does not have a very likable protagonist. That's pretty much like an instant death knell for me to read something. The thing is, like all the detractive reviews, what gets them the most is the fact that this guy basically, either through force or even consent, sleeps with kids that are under 18. It's like, nope. The Ghost book is not for adolescents. That goes well beyond the fact. People do praise the battle scenes, but yeah, the gratuitous sexual domination and rape offered, for titillation value. In my personal world, such advocacy is not okay. I have a hard time finishing this one, and I would encourage Ringo not to write another like it. Again, this is all just about the first book. I could go along, let's say, here, I will even go to book 2. Sometimes it's not like a factor of like sensitivity readers or censoring yourself and things like that. There's just some things that most people, like a baseline, hurting kids, hurting animals. I mean, even in the one movie that was based off of the comic or something else, like the one with Will Smith, and he's like surrounded by a bunch of vampires, and there's the German Shepherd. I still to this day cannot watch the German Shepherd die. I have to fast forward through that shit. Like there's something like gratuitous in your face, like God, what was it? The girl with the dragon tattoo. yeah, that's gratuitous. Like I had to fast forward through stuff. Like some of the mystery aspects were interesting, but it's dear God, the amount of there's just so much stuff that I just can't take too much of it because my tank will just go. It's gone. It's like gone. I don't need my mind to go there. No. And sadly, most will do that for just basic shock value. Um, let's see. What are some people? Yeah, soft porn included for 12-year-olds. Have not read Ringo for a while, but really liked his book. Hope Ringo could do better on future books. Not will not waste money on this series. And let's see. The people that are basically telling, like, giving it better reviews, they aren't really mentioning the sex scenes in terms of like how old the people are involved in it. They're just saying a word of caution. Frequent steamy twisted sex scenes, and detailed rape make this a disrecommend for anyone of under about 40 years old. Winky face. Seriously, college age and above. Great character development. Good guys are true heroes, and you really hate the bad guys. Thing is, I don't want my good guys to just arbitrarily like frickin' rape people. It's like, what's the point? There's no virtue in that. Um, oh God, let's see. Mike Ghost never fails to deliver. This is no exception. I strongly recommend the entire series. Uh, let's see. Some people are saying the limitless test for this book series is if you were strongly against the Iraq War, very pro-feminist, or even slightly prudish, do your blood pressure a favor and refrain from touching the series with a 10-foot barge pole. Thing is, there's a difference between being prudish and like, are you seriously finding enjoyment in seeing human suffering within something that's supposed to have like entertainment or escapist value? Because I've noticed with a lot of military sci-fi I do read, yes, there are some more gritty, this is war kind of aspects, but most of them pull back from the brink of, being like Full Metal Jacket, showing how a guy can go crazy and shoot himself in the face. You know, there's only so much I can handle of that. Because, again, the real world has more than enough nihilism and all sorts of craziness happening now that it's like, I want books to be my escape. I'll even take into account, let's see if I can find it. There was a book that Bookworm offered earlier today to me. That, what did he call it? The Eighth God. Now, I jokingly remarked to him, no sensitivity readers required. Thing is, with this particular book, yes, the orcs do rape people, and one of the players in this book, or one of the protags in this book, is a half orc that is a product of said rape. The difference being is this is only said in a few lines. He doesn't go into any kind of distinct detail other than to say that since this half-orc treats certain kinds of prostitutes very well, he doesn't go out of his way to abuse them. They will tell him a bunch of different secrets that they've heard while servicing other clientele. Again, not going into great length of throbbing members or whatever else that Anita Blake does and the absolute horrific shit that Black Jules did. Because again, by the end of that first book, I was just like, "What the fuck?" Like, I don't mind the uplifted animals doing magic and unicorns being able to talk to people and the dogs being able to talk to people and all that stuff because they're more magically inclined and like they're not human based magic users. But that was the only highlight of that series. Everything else was just a dumpster fire. I don't recommend reading it. I really don't. And from the looks of it, from the looks of Anne Bishop's samples of other things, she hasn't gotten much better. She always likes to kind of look at that whole through the mirror darkly, everything is shit-tastic kind of setup. It hasn't changed. It's McEdge to be McEdge, and more edge, and like more blatant kind of like titillation and just sheer shock value It's not worth it, people. It really isn't. But yeah, that's the main difference between that and something like the Eighth God, where again you can basically explain in a few sentences, like, yes, these are night ladies. Boop boop, done. Yeah, what a day. Today was one hell of a day. In fact, as far as the Ringo series goes here with Kildare, this person's probably the most on point. Ringo normally writes military sci-fi, and most of his offerings in that genre are extremely good. This one is more of a freelance war on terror book, and he seems to be in grave danger of crossing the line between challenging the reader and going out of your way to see how many people you can offend. That This goes even for his existing fans among military sci-fi readers who are probably neither the most prudish or left or liberal of audiences, which is me. Like, I would say I am pretty right leaning in most things. Because again, I'm pro life. Like, we have so much stuff out there that can prevent pregnancy, so you don't even have to do the morning after pill or anything else like that. Just be responsible. I mean, it takes two to tango, especially if it requires an aspect to have kids. Seriously. Um, my preference is like, if I watch R-rated stuff, like I don't mind if there's like boobs or whatever else is happening on screen, but as long as it cuts away and does fade to black, I'm pretty fine with it. Because again, like, most people don't really cover sex too well. That's just my personal observation. Some people could probably find somebody that does the whole sex aspect fairly well, but I'd rather leave it just to human imagination with most things. Again, that's just my personal preference. But to continue on with this thing, 2/3 of this book reads like a manifesto for the hardline neocon wing of the Republican Party, complete with a defense secretary who appears to be meant as a sympathetic portrait of Donald Rumsfeld. Explicit insults aimed at Democrats in general, and a thinly veiled one aimed at Hillary Clinton in particular. For those who don't have a problem with that, the middle third of the book reads like a top-shelf SM sex book, so that may offend a good chunk of the religious right among those who are not put off by the politics. I guess it's just because part of how I was raised is like, sex is a very private thing between you and whoever you're basically sharing your bed with, provided it isn't something like fucking pedophilia. I mean, it's just gotten to the point where when stuff like Twitter doesn't fucking ban pedos, that's telling you something. I'm like, is the world that far gone? Well, luckily I saw enough reaction with the cuties thing to know that at least people still do have some semblance of standards, even if it isn't applied all the time. But damn. No. Yeah. I mean, even just to go back to the Rhapsody books by Hayden, by Elizabeth Hayden, even though the two characters were close in age to each other, it's still, it's like, when it comes to that shit, if you're going to have any kind of like sexual things happen between characters, make sure they're 18 plus. And I don't care what kind of setting it is. That's just my personal preference. Please have them both be like of an age of majority. But yeah, to continue on with this review, the hero spends much of the book telling people that he's not a good guy, but he's a bad guy who happens to be on the right side. Excuse me. Towards the end of the book, he proves convincingly that this is absolutely true. Ringo isn't quite the only author to cast a rapist as the anti-hero. Remember Thomas Covenant? Oh God. I tried to read one of that guy's books one time, and it's like, are you all trying to outdo J.R.R. Martin for anti-heroes and shitty people in general? I wish more people would legitimately copy Glenn Cook, because the Black Company people, and even Garrett P.I. Garrett P.I. is my more favorite of the two, But even with Black Company, he didn't make them all fucking bastards. There was a brotherhood, but there was a mix of different people in that brotherhood. God, but Ghost probably wins the prize for least sympathetic central character I've read from a long time, even over some of the same authors. Watch on the Rhine, in which the heroes were reformed Waffen SS men. Oh shit. Oh, oh God. Oh boy, excuse me. But the action scenes in the book are mostly exciting if the occasional bit with one hand bound Jack was free. There was a lot of humor, much of it outrageous or sick, but the book often had me laughing, sometimes against my will. I rather admire the courage of publishers for releasing this. They probably should have put the publishers recommend that this book should be only sold to adults warning on it as a broad limited test. Yes. Uh, if you were against the Iraq War or even a little bit prudish, do your blood pressure a favor and leave this one alone. I see that Ringo has written several sequels. I'll probably read them, but in the spirit of proverbial fitness report of an indifferent officer that his men should follow him anywhere but only a sense of morbid curiosity, I'll wait for the paperbacks. And apparently they did a postscript. Um, let's see. Ironically, the most entertaining part of the book, Kildare, comes from the body of the novel itself. It's the disclaimer facing the title page, which clearly demonstrates that Ringo has a sense of humor about the controversy which was stirred up by Ghost. That disclaimer deserves to be the last word on Ghost, and reads as follows. This is a work of fiction. All the characters' events portrayed in the book are fictional. Any resemblance to real people or incidents is purely coincidental. Let's see. Any attempt by the reader to replicate any scene in the series is to be taken as the reader's own risk. For that matter, most of the actions of the main character are illegal under U.S. international law, as well as one of the stricter religions in the world. Yeah. I mean, there's the thing. I guess it mostly just comes down to what is your endurance factor as a reader. Me personally, even something as classic as Where the Red Fern Grows upset me terribly because the dogs died. Like, kids dying, dogs dying, animals dying. Like, anything that's like that on screen, I'm pretty much like, nope, fuck this shit, I'm out. Like, even Marley and Me, I'm like, oh my god, I did not survive that movie. Like, just call me a sap if you will, but it's like, there's a couple different points where you know, I have my limits. I freaking have my limits. No matter how hardcore, you know, somebody might seem on the outside, everybody has certain limits when it comes to reading, writing, or everything in between. But yeah, I guess in case people have stuck around this long, thanks for listening. Maybe one day I can parse this down into something, you know, a little less rambly. I just wanted to get it off my chest after I got out of work. So, have a good night, everybody.